I'm Sanali Shaw, and you're watching me on YouTube and Facebook Live. What is consciousness, and how does consciousness or conscious awareness arise? Is a topic for discussion today. And it may seem very simple and easy, and the more you study about consciousness, the more it gets complicated. The dictionary definition of consciousness is the state of being awareness. It is the realization of knowing that you are aware. Now, how do you get aware? You get aware through sensory experiences, through thoughts, perception. Perception is the main part of it. Thoughts, ideas, and and anything about sensing, about emotions, about feelings of others. That's how you get aware of your about the society, about yourself through consciousness. Now, the question is that our mind, our some people say that consciousness, that the brain, our mind, is a physical thing, and it is a physical thing. It generates consciousness. So, on the other hand, our thoughts, our experiences, it is a common thing that we experience those things in our daily lives. And our brain is a physical, tangible thing. And on the other hand, our thoughts are intangible thing. So a brain, a physical thing, can create those thoughts and experiences, an intangible thing. That is our discussion topic for discussion today. And my guest is, he has a different theory, Ed Konowicz, and he has joined us from Virginia, United States.
Yeah, hi
Hi, Ed.
everybody. I put my earphones in, forgot that.
Okay.
The major issue I think
Mm-hmm,
is the brain. You know,
mm-hmm,
we attribute consciousness to the brain, and we don't
mm-hmm,
have any proof of that. What science
mm-hmm,
gives us as proof is a misinterpretation. Let me give you an example.
mm-hmm,
When we watch TV, we could be watching football players and actors, but we
mm-hmm,
don't open up the TV to find the football players or actors.
mm-hmm,
It's absolutely ridiculous.
mm-hmm,
And we're assuming consciousness, which is ourselves, we're the actor, we're the football player, exists in our brain.
mm-hmm.
But there's actually a much larger proof, and I'm an unusual person because I have been paralyzed and I
Mm-hmm.
can verify for myself. This is proof for
Mm-hmm.
myself. I mean, seeing is believing. When you're paralyzed, your thinking is intact. You can speak, you can hear, you can't move your body, you can't move your mouth,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not in control of your body when you're paralyzed. It's happened to
Mm-hmm.
me after an operation.
Mm-hmm.
I was given a ketamine drug, and immediately after the operation, I woke up and I was paralyzed. I could not move, I could not talk, I could
Mm-hmm.
not show that I was alive,
Mm-hmm.
but I was fully alive.
Just
And
like a patient in a coma.
yes, and
Mm-hmm.
many patients report when they wake up from the coma that they
Mm-hmm.
were fully alive, that they
Mm-hmm.
fully experienced everything in the room.
Mm-hmm.
So, what really the brain is a connection between two worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Consciousness exists somewhat in another world, and the
Mm-hmm.
link between our consciousness or soul and our body is the brain. So, if you
Mm-hmm.
destroy the brain, you destroyed the link. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean we're in the brain. It means
Mm-hmm.
we're using the brain to control the body.
So, in other words, you mean to say that our brain is a device, is a router to to receive or send the signal uh, in the other world. that the consciousness which is there.
Yes, it interfaces between two worlds, the world of
Mm-hmm.
consciousness and what we call the physical world.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you took an electrode and activated a part of the brain, you make that connection. So,
Mm-hmm.
the hand could move, you could have a memory, a lot of different concepts occur. The real
Mm-hmm.
issue for neuroscientists
Mm-hmm.
is where's the screen? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we're viewing a three-dimensional screen with
Mm-hmm.
sound and effects, but
Mm-hmm.
where's the screen in the brain? You're
Mm-hmm.
watching TV or watching a football game or watching a newscast.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the screen in the brain? Where's the simulation going on?
Mm-hmm.
And no one really can answer it. I actually think the simulation occurs in the skull. And the
Mm-hmm.
reason
In the
why I
brain.
think it does, not in the
Mm-hmm.
brain, in the skull.
Mm-hmm.
If you damage the skull, the person goes unconscious. If you
Mm-hmm.
knock the skull, even if the brain bounces around, it still has electrical activity. It's
Mm-hmm.
cushioned. But why,
Mm-hmm.
when you damage the skull, which I've had happen, I had a baseball hit me about
Mm-hmm.
5, 10 feet away from the batter. I was
Mm-hmm.
watching some kids play baseball. The
Mm-hmm.
baseball hit me in the head and
Mm-hmm.
I went unconscious. I went black.
Mm-hmm. So
But my brain was still working.
mhm. You said earlier that brain is consciousness is in the other world. On the other hand, our brain is a device. Our skull is a device that
Yeah, it's an
connects the
interface
physical,
device.
yeah, interface device that connects the physical world with the other world. Uh, how do you prove that?
Well, you have there's the most important proof is your own experience.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, science denies that. Science wants to claim what you perceive is not valid. For example, suppose you get a vaccine and die the
Mm-hmm.
next day or die within the hour. Science wants to say that's coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
But when they say a person died from a COVID 19 infection, they don't say
Mm-hmm.
coincidence, even if they
Mm-hmm.
have a bad heart. So
Mm-hmm.
science is a religion
Mm-hmm.
where if the layperson or the public experiences direct evidence, it's
Mm-hmm.
called coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
When they experience evidence, they
Mm-hmm.
call it science. But
Mm-hmm.
evidence is evidence. Just because
Mm-hmm.
you call it science doesn't make the evidence more true. And just
Mm-hmm.
because the person experiencing a fact experiences it doesn't make it
Mm-hmm.
coincidence. Now, there
Mm-hmm.
is always a certain amount of coincidence. But if most people in a coma say, when I woke up, I could communicate, but I heard everything, I perceived everything, I was fully conscious, I just couldn't move my body. That can't be
Mm-hmm.
coincidence because a lot of people are reporting it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because it's not a scientist,
Mm-hmm.
it's called coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
But if a scientist does a test with 10 people and gets the same reaction in 10 people, they call it fact. So we're dealing with a religion that only a priest, a scientist, can declare evidence. If you're not a scientist, you're not allowed to declare evidence.
Mm-hmm. I think
And I think
that's
part,
how I think that's how the world is working. If you are not professional in anything, whatever you say will be discredited. You cannot, for instance, you don't have a license, you cannot go and defend other people or defend yourself. But you can defend yourself in the court as an advocate. But if you don't have a doctorate degree, you cannot medicate yourself. If you don't have engineering degree, you cannot do plumbing and other electrical works. And I think that's how the world is working. If you don't have a degree or license in a certain field, then you cannot work. You If you do work, then your identity, your credibility will be discredited.
Right. Every field has its narrative or its
Mm-hmm.
propaganda, and even
Mm-hmm.
if you're an expert and you disagree with the narrative, you
Mm-hmm.
will be discredited.
Yes.
And so it's very important to understand that science has become a religion with a
Mm-hmm.
priesthood. And if you disagree with their conclusions, and if you have your
Mm-hmm.
own evidence and you're
Mm-hmm.
not part of the priesthood, or even if you are part of the priesthood, if your evidence does not align with the dogma, with the
Mm-hmm.
narrative, it's rejected. Now, I have further proof.
Mm-hmm.
There's two worlds. There's the
Mm-hmm.
world of consciousness and the physical world.
Mm-hmm.
And we, through our um, brain and nervous system, control our body.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of kids are damaged by poisons, lead in the
Mm-hmm.
water, mercury, arsenic in the well. And
Mm-hmm.
when they are, they misbehave. They're no longer fully in control of their body, or they can't
Mm-hmm.
talk. They actually, their nervous system has been damaged by the toxins.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not fully responsible. I'll give you another
Mm-hmm.
example. When we sleep,
Mm-hmm.
we're no longer in, quote, perceiving the physical world. We can perceive another world in a dream. And my older
Mm-hmm.
sister used to walk in her sleep. In fact, one
Mm-hmm.
time she
Yeah.
walked out the front door. My parents had to get her, and she said she didn't
Mm-hmm.
know what she was doing. It wasn't
Yeah.
she who was walking.
Yeah. Sometimes people talk in their sleep.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and which is when people drink alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
It's called
Mm-hmm.
spirits alcohol, and I
Mm-hmm.
think the Arabic roots also mean spirits. They can be
Mm-hmm.
influenced by another consciousness. A person who
Mm-hmm.
is very gentle and communicable can become very aggressive and fight.
Mm-hmm.
A person who's very introverted can become extroverted, very talkative, and communicable.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's because they're under the influence by damaging their nervous system, their own spirits or soul or
Mm-hmm.
consciousness connection to the body is disrupted. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a body mind link through the brain and nervous system that can be
Mm-hmm.
disrupted. And we see
Mm-hmm.
this with people who do drugs. They experience other consciousness, and the reason being these drugs affect and damage the nervous system and brain. We know alcohol damages the brain. The
Mm-hmm.
brain has a lot of fat in it, and alcohol
Mm-hmm.
dissolves fat. So
Mm-hmm.
we see what we call aberrant behavior in a
Mm-hmm.
person who gets drunk or drinks a lot of alcohol. And that's because their own consciousness is no longer in that control. In fact, after a person drinks a lot of alcohol and
Mm-hmm.
falls asleep and wakes up, they don't remember their activities while under the influence of alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
How could they not remember it? Because the real key to consciousness is memory.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have memory, how are you conscious? It's very difficult because you can't speak language, you don't remember a language.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to respond. Most of our learning comes from memory. Most of our about 95% of our consciousness is recalling memories.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is the brain and the nervous system is a link, a communication system between our consciousness. If a consciousness does not have a body to talk, does not have a body to move, how's it going to communicate except in your consciousness world, like in a dream?
Mm-hmm.
So we view consciousness as the product of the brain. We are taught by scientists that a brain has consciousness. I'm going to prove that's wrong.
Mhm.
Scientists say, and I think you can agree with me, the bigger the
Mhm.
brain, the more complex the brain, like the cerebral cortex, the more folds in the brain, the more parts of the brain, the more
Mhm.
intelligent the animal,
Mhm.
right? That's what we're taught. Human beings got bigger brains than dogs.
Mhm. Mhm.
But a parrot that has the brain the size of a peanut, the tip
Mhm.
of your pinky is I
Mhm.
don't know whether I can show this good. Yeah, the
Yes,
tip
I
of your
can.
pinky
Mhm.
is the size of a brain of a parrot, yet a parrot can count, can form simple sentences, has the intelligence of a 3 or 4 year old
Mhm.
with a bird brain.
Mhm.
So if consciousness was based on a brain, why do birds have small brains and are some of the smartest animals? Some
Mhm.
biologists are now saying the crow is the most intelligent animal after a human being. Why? Because crows can solve puzzles, they can use tools. I saw this.
Mhm.
I actually saw a
Mhm.
crow use a tool, my screwdriver.
Mhm.
And they can communicate with other crows. They have a language of warning, of talking to each other, of when to fly, of how to attack a hawk or an eagle that's in their territory. They
Mhm.
coordinate their activity, they talk among themselves, and yet they have a small brain compared to a dog. Now, a dog has a small brain compared to an elephant, but a dog can learn about 2 to 300 different words. Dogs
Mhm.
are actually smarter than monkeys. You can't have
Mhm.
a monkey as a pet because it's not intelligent enough to cooperate. A monkey's going to
Mhm.
mess up your room. A monkey's going to bite you at times. Where most
Mhm.
dogs are more intelligent, they know that you're protecting them, feeding them, and they're going to behave better because of higher intelligence, and they're going to
Mhm.
listen to your language better.
Mhm.
But according to
I, I,
scientists,
mhm. I think learning and memorizing and analytical skills, there are three separate skills. And just like you gave the example of monkeys, they bite you, they mess up your rooms. I think monkeys have a analytical or creative skill, just like many people have, that they don't listen to anything. They just want to do something new. On the other hand, some animals have a memorizing, just like elephants have a very good memory, and dogs can learn things, and parrots can memorize few things. I think we have to differentiate and learn and know the difference
yeah, I agree with you.
among
I mean,
separate.
it's a good
Mhm.
point. I agree that
Mhm.
different animals have
Mhm.
different levels of skills.
Mhm.
But I also agree we can summarize intelligence.
Mhm.
I do think we can say that a dog generally is smarter than the average monkey.
Mhm.
And part of intelligence is self control,
Mhm.
which is we get angry and we're not going to throw the books in our room around. We get angry, we're
Mhm.
not going to break classes. A monkey would.
Mhm.
A
Mhm.
dog is going to get angry and bark. Sometimes
Mhm.
they might bite you,
Mhm.
but generally, unless it's a young dog and it's improperly trained,
Mhm.
it's generally not going in front of you make a mess. When it's by
Mhm.
itself and
Mhm.
frustrated,
Mhm.
the dog can make a mess. But I want to get back to the crow or the
Mhm.
parrot that can learn language. They have such tiny brains. If
But they have.
intelligence was based on the brain, then these parrots and crows would not be so intelligent.
Mhm. I
And if
think you should hear intelligence. I think it's not a good word. You should use the word memorizing skill. They have a good memory to some extent. They can memorize few sentences, or just like a parrot can memorize things. And But you can use the word intelligence because for the crow, because they can use tools, as you have given the example of using the uh, what was it
The
using?
crow, I had
Uh,
a crow actually come down. I was
mhm,
talking to it. It came down when I was cutting the grass with a
mhm,
lawnmower and took the
mhm,
screwdriver that I
mhm,
was using to clean the grass off the bottom of the
mhm,
motor and went over with the screwdriver in its mouth and started to clean the lawnmower for me, scraping off the grass on the bottom of the lawnmower. So it
mhm,
saw me using the tool,
mhm,
it understood what I was doing, and then wanted
mhm,
to show me how intelligent it was. So it picked up my screwdriver, walked over to the lawnmower that I had turned
mhm,
sideways, scraped off some of the grass for me. It
mhm,
was demonstrating its intelligence.
mhm,
So we see this in some animals. I mean, dolphins are known as highly intelligent, can be
mhm,
trained like dogs, and killer whales.
mhm,
The issue is they have big brains though.
mhm,
We would expect, given the size of a brain of a killer whale or
mhm,
dolphin,
mhm,
we would expect that level of intelligence. But given the size of the brain of a crow or a parrot, it doesn't make sense that they're so intelligent because it
mhm,
means the level of intelligence or memorization or learning skills or imitation, whatever number of skills you want to divide intelligence into, is not
mhm,
based on the size of the brain.
mhm,
But scientists act like it is. They
mhm,
finally have to say, no, it isn't because of the crow. It's interesting, this whole emphasis that consciousness and intelligence is based on the brain is defeated by the crow. The crow
mhm,
makes fun of it
mhm.
because the
So,
crow is a contradiction to the consciousness based upon a brain theory.
so the
And if you
question is there a link between consciousness and intelligence?
and intentions,
Intelligence.
intelligence, yes, they're it has to do with harmony.
Mhm,
If you're in a lot of conflict, if you're fighting someone, you can't fix the car, right?
mhm,
You go out to change the water pump on your car and someone tries to rob your tools and you get in a fight,
mhm,
you look like you can't change the water pump because you can't do it. And we get in a fight in our consciousness at times.
mhm,
People argue with us, they argue with us at a distance. And people and children, particularly in a lot of conflict, from a family that has a lot of conflict, they not
mhm,
may not display intelligence because they're facing an argument in their mind.
mhm,
So part of intelligence is achieving a high level of harmony, which is and this is why music is associated with a lot of very intelligent people, because they have the space to contemplate and reduce conflict. So I don't think intelligence is based on the size of the brain. I think it's based upon the strength of the consciousness, particularly in resolving and putting off conflict. That conflict distracts the intelligence, divides the intelligence. So it's really easy to make slaves of people is you treat them poorly and create so much conflict, they can't be able to display intelligence. So
mhm,
slavery and torture, like sexual trafficking, go
mhm,
together. Because if you
mhm.
disrupt the peace of the
Of the mind.
consciousness of
Mhm,
the mind, it can't think as well because we sort of pull in, we get inspired. Some people call it God or Allah. We can pray or meditate and get inspired to be more intelligent, to be more loving, which is be more in harmony. Because the more in
What about
harmony we have,
what about meditation? And we have talked about, you see the link between, in your view, that there is a link between intelligence
I
and
think that,
and consciousness. On the other hand, meditation, is meditation and the consciousness are the same. Meditation and consciousness are the same thing.
well, no, I think what really correct meditation is, I'm going to disagree with Buddha.
Mhm.
Correct meditation is not silencing the mind.
You are
Correct
disagreeing.
meditation,
You are
there-
disagreeing with Buddha, and
yes,
many
I'm
people
disagreeing.
won't like you. Many people won't like it in Burma because they
Yeah.
are a religious country. Anyways, okay, continue.
Well, meditation should be resolving the conflicts. You
Mhm,
mentally experiences other people's disagreement or
mhm,
disharmony with you. And if you can resolve those issues to bring your consciousness in more harmony, now you
mhm,
can hear inspiration. Now you can be in touch with higher consciousness,
mhm,
which is conflict keeps you from achieving harmony. Where when you're in harmony, you get in touch with more intelligent consciousness.
mhm,
Because more intelligence consciousness is in more harmony. And this is where we get to, I sent you a link on this,
mhm,
Rupert Sheldrake.
mhm. I
Rupert
want.
Sheldrake talks
Mhm,
about morphic resonance.
mhm,
He sort of feels we communicate within a species, that we're sort of telepathically connected. And he did experiments where he proved that people who leave work at certain different times, their dog at home will go to the window, whether it's 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock. The dog senses the owner's intent to go home.
mhm.
And
This like it's a very good example. He gave the another example that if you are staring at someone and at their back, then they would instantly turn back and they would tell you that they know that someone is staring at them. You get the feeling, and it's a common experience that we experience it in our daily life, that whenever someone is staring at us, then we know that someone is staring is not is looking at us. How do we know? It's a very good word that the word attention is is from the Latin word attendere. I think attendere. It means you are approaching, you are reaching out to that person.
yeah, I think most people have experience that they
Mhm,
can turn around and feel someone who's been staring at their back. And
mhm,
security personnel notice when someone's on a security camera, they're more
mhm,
aware of it and behave better. So,
mhm.
and
And
the other
uh,
effect is, and you see this, I
mhm,
see this as a male. If you see an
mhm,
attractive woman
mhm,
and you notice her, she notices that you notice her. She's
mhm,
either going to feel imposed upon or she's going to enjoy the admiration. And you have to be
mhm,
sensitive to it
mhm.
because the
And
woman,
there it's a very good thing that some intelligence agencies, when they give the training, the security personnel, during their training, they tell them that when you are following someone, do not look at their back directly. When you look at their backs, then they would know that you are watching them. So you have to keep your focus on the other side or the other thing, so you are looking at them but you are not looking at them directly.
yes, that's a
Hmm,
very good point Rupert makes, and
hmm,
and there's a lot of things like that,
hmm,
and we kind of ignore it.
hmm,
And the behavior of an animal, I mean, look at the size of
hmm,
the continent of
hmm,
Eurasia, and
hmm,
there's animals like horses throughout Eurasia. And
hmm,
some animals will develop a unique behavior and then it will spread. It's
hmm,
sort of like the Japanese monkeys and washing their food. When
hmm,
about it's called the 100th monkey effect. when the 100th monkey started to wash its food in water like a raccoon, the
mhm,
rest of the monkeys in Japan started to do it.
mhm,
So morphic resonance is a fancy term I think Sheldrake is trying to appease his colleagues,
mhm,
means morphic is form, resonance means you're in tune to with it. And our
mhm,
memories or consciousness is tuned to certain images.
mhm,
So the closer you are to that image, the more you're in tune to other things that are close to that image.
mhm,
As a result of that, our DNA is sort of in tune to our ancestors. So we look like our ancestors
mhm,
because we're in tune to our ancestors.
mhm.
Now, what sort of does that mean? I'll give you a very good example.
I think it's a we learn just like we learn from our parents, we learn from our society, we learn languages. They don't teach us many things. Our society, our parents, are the setup and social environment of our house, of whatever, wherever you are, the society and those things they teach us indirectly. We learn many things from our cultures.
Yeah, particularly language is tuning us to
Mhm,
certain words. So we're
mhm,
going to think more like the people of our culture because
mhm,
we're tuning to certain words. But let me give you an example, though.
mhm,
If you want to remember your childhood,
mhm,
crawl on the floor for 2 hours, look under tables, crawl under tables, look under
mhm,
beds. And after
mhm,
you crawl around for a couple hours, your memories from childhood when you were crawling on all fours will come
mhm,
back. Our
mhm,
memories are tuned to the way we look at the world.
mhm,
So if you go with a religion,
mhm,
you're coming in tune with other people who believe that religion. If you're
mhm,
under a government, then you're in tune with those people under the government. And memory seems to be a tuning process.
mhm,
And one of the best examples of this is smell.
mhm,
We remember certain smells from childhood. I remember a particular smell. There was a beach whale, and
mhm,
the decaying beach whale has a very distinctive smell.
mhm.
If I ever smell it again, I'm going to remember that. So
Okay.
a memory tunes us by smell. If we smell something familiar, we go back to that memory.
Mhm,
But we're using our body's senses, but the consciousness tunes to other consciousness. I think this is how people fall in love. They tune to each other.
mhm.
And once they're
Love is
tuning to each other,
love is a very good example. There, uh, it is a kind of connection. That connection is just develops. We don't know how it develops, but it does develop when your vibes, your feelings are matched, attuned at certain level, and it doesn't matter whatever the distance is. You see someone online or in the physical world, and you send your minds, your consciousness sends the signal, and the other person, when if the other person receives it and has the same level of mm, consciousness or the same level of vibes, then they are matched. The connection is developed. uh,
yeah, I
I
think the
think it,
connection can get very strong.
mhm.
And
When
we
the
usually
vibes are
don't
the same.
feel things until it's intense emotion. For example,
Mhm,
someone we love, if they're in trouble or have an accident
mhm.
and they're
Yes,
sort of screaming, we
mhm.
perceive it. But
We
normally
perceive
it's
it.
just background. And I
Mhm,
think Rupert Sheldrake shows that we have these extended perceptions. One of this is he'll take three or four people who are friends and
mhm,
have one person's phone ring and have them guess who called them. And if
mhm.
it's three people, it would
I
be
was just
one out
thinking
of
about
three.
you. Yes, and people say that I was just thinking about you, and you just called. And I think it's a very good example. That ordinary example, we experience it in our daily lives.
I think, but the problem is science is going to reject those, call it
Mm-hmm.
coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if we have a strong enough experience, which
Mm-hmm.
is when Sherlock Holmes solves a problem, it
Mm-hmm.
usually isn't finding one piece of evidence. It's finding a lot of pieces of the puzzle, and the puzzle points to one thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
number one, being paralyzed and having full memory, full consciousness, yet not being able to speak, not being able to move our bodies, says our consciousness is not based on just the brain, because the
Mm-hmm.
brain is controlling our bodies and our speaking with our mouth, and that could be damaged by poisons such as drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, that we dream, and some of our dreams about people and events come true. We seem to
Mm-hmm.
be experiencing something at a distance. When we
Mm-hmm.
fall in love, we get more in tune to someone and we can actually begin to feel their emotions. One of these
Mm-hmm.
by themselves is not enough,
Mm-hmm.
but when you put them all together, it points to that consciousness is a different world. And all that
Mm-hmm.
brain is doing is linking us to the body so we have control of the body. And if we take drugs such as alcohol, we lose control of the body and something else may gain control of our body.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
I think it,
sleepwalking.
mhm.
Something
There's
else is,
there's a I think scientific reason. I think you can explain it better, that our consciousness and our minds is like a wave, is like a flow. It moves in a flow. And this, just like in the quantum physics, they use the energy, the electrons, they move in the in the layer or in the waves.
yeah, I think it's very much like that. Our
Mhm.
consciousness is in waves, which
Mhm.
is we can't have consistent feeling. It comes in waves. And
Mhm.
number two, quantum mechanics or physics talks about light being a wavefront, which is it spread
Mhm.
over a distance, and then it
Mhm.
collapses to one point, which is usually an electron. It could be
Mhm.
a proton, it could be part of the nucleus, but it
Mhm.
collapses to one point, and now that electron has that energy. So
Mhm.
we sometimes tune to a feeling, it collapses on us, and we know who's feeling that. Other
Mhm.
times it's just the wind. We're just
Mhm.
experiencing a lot of waves because we didn't receive that wave. The wavefront did not collapse into a photon.
Mhm.
And a photon really is a picture.
Mhm.
We get a picture. This was done by a college where I went to school, North
Mhm.
College of Engineering, now called, I believe, New Jersey's Institute of Technology. They would
Mhm.
have people in one room dream, and they would have another friend in another room look at a picture.
Mhm.
And then when the person went into REM, rapid eye movement, which you can detect with
Mhm.
instruments, they would wake up the person dreaming, and they were most of the time dreaming of the picture that their friend in the other room was looking at.
Mhm.
And as soon as they had significant results from this, the US Navy took control of the experiment and made it top secret.
Mhm.
So I think this is understood by the people in power. The people in power have a much better understanding of consciousness.
Mhm.
They teach it in their secret societies and in their intelligence network, like the
Mhm.
security personnel. Don't look at a person if you're following them because they'll
Mhm.
sense it. They
Mhm.
they actually teach these skills, but to the public they deny they exist. And the scientists are the modern priesthood that
Mhm.
give you a narrative that's simply not true. Intelligence is not just based on brain size, and the
Mhm.
crow proves that. We
Mhm.
even see that
And
with
they,
the octopus.
mhm.
Octopuses are extremely intelligent, and they don't have a normal brain.
Mhm.
but yet they can solve problems, they can use tools, they can learn tricks.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of reason to doubt the brain-based theory of consciousness. I think we kind of covered the topic pretty good. Do you have any
Mm-hmm.
other things we should? I mean, that's a lot to think about. That
Yes,
science
it
is.
is it's a bit a complicated topic. It may seem when you send me the link and you when we discuss about the topic and consciousness, and I googled it a little, and I couldn't find any relevant material. Most of the material I found is about psychology and psychological definition. They just cover the topic in a few sentences and a few definitions. But when you go in the details, when you study more in the more you study it, the more it gets complicated, that the consciousness and our experiences, and especially the perception, it appears in our in the perception, it appears in our consciousness, or the consciousness uh, appears in the perception, or there is a link between them. The more you study about consciousness, about our experiences, about the wave function, that it moves, it reaches out to the person, or uh, to to the things that you are focusing on.
The thing that's confusing, I think there are
Mhm,
two different worlds. There's the
mhm,
physical world and the world of consciousness or dreams.
mhm,
But they're linked, they have a lot of connections.
mhm,
But we can drift off into consciousness that has no connection practically to the physical world. So it can be
mhm,
very confusing.
mhm,
And it takes a master,
mhm,
someone who really understands meditation and
mhm,
consciousness to really have a good orientation about what's going on, which are some people are more telepathic than others because
mhm,
they can separate the noise. In all
mhm,
communication, you have your signal to noise ratio, which is
mhm,
you have to center on the specific signal or communication you want, and you have to basically filter out the noise. And it's
mhm,
difficult. If all human beings are telepathic, then you have a lot of noise. You've got
mhm,
billions of different broadcasts. How are you going to tune to the specific one that you want? That's a
mhm,
very difficult process. And I think
mhm.
when people fall in love, they're able to tune to each
To
other.
Yes, and their energy, their vibes, the resonance, it just connects at the same level. And it doesn't happen often. When it does, and it connects, and it happens instantly. You don't need to just plan. You just it just happens.
Yeah, I think music helps. I think a
Mhm,
lot of people connect
mhm,
through the appreciation of the same music,
mhm,
whether it's popular music, whether it's songs,
mhm,
whether it's classical music. If they
mhm,
like the same music, it
mhm,
helps them to tune to each other.
mhm, mhm. Okay, we have got a comment here. What a great interview, one of the best. Thank you, Linda.
Yeah, Linda's
And
very, very intelligent. I'm not saying that because she complimented us, but but I am saying that because of
Mhm,
her responses. She
mhm,
understands when I present an idea. She
mhm,
gives an extremely intelligent reply, or she
mhm,
initiates an intelligent idea. And I'm
mhm,
really happy to have her to listen to us.
mhm.
And
Uh,
and
and, and and most importantly, I think the thing you said earlier, that our conscious, there are two worlds, the world of physical world and the world of consciousness. And our brain is a device, is a router, is a broadband that connects, that sends out the signal or receive the signal between the consciousness and our mind and our body. And I think the thing the experiences then the experiences the example we've discussed, just like the security example, security personnel are trained that when you are following someone, do not look at them directly in their backs. When you do, they would know that you are looking at them. Just look around, and the person you're following, it shouldn't be your focus. That's one example. And the example of monkeys and the dogs, that the dogs know that know the timing when their owner is coming back to the home. They just know. And third example of love, the when you are in tune with someone, your vibes are matched, then you don't need to talk. It just it just it just develops, it just connects. And I think these all of these examples suggest, and they point to the same thing, point to the same direction, that the consciousness, our brain, uh, it doesn't happen instantaneous. It works like a wave, that you send signal in waves, and
Yeah,
that's
I
how
think that's an
I.
important point.
Mhm.
I think all
And
those
that.
points you made were very
Mhm,
good. I'm very happy you listened to the links I sent and you thought so well on this. You made some very good points.
mhm,
I
mhm,
want to make a different point
mhm,
that we, to communicate, we have to tune in to the other consciousness.
mhm,
So I think the tyranny today, the dictatorship, is to
mhm,
create enough conflict
mhm,
that, and this is what meditation or prayer is, we want to tune out conflict and
mhm,
to higher consciousness. People
mhm,
call that God, or they
mhm,
call it Buddha or something. We want to be
mhm,
able to tune to higher consciousness, which is be in harmony, because
mhm,
conflict is noise. And by
mhm,
tuning to higher consciousness, whether it's Hercula and the benzene ring, or Newton
mhm,
and his concepts of conservation of momentum, we
mhm,
start thinking more intelligently. As
mhm,
we come in more harmony with the people around us, we reach towards a higher level of intelligence in the consciousness world, not in our world,
mhm.
but now we can reach higher in the world of consciousness to more loving and intelligent consciousness.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah,
And
we're about
I think,
almost, I think we could almost call it quits unless we have
yes,
any questions.
yes, and I think we have covered enough. We have started our journey from, and our experiments, our examples, we have discussed, they point to the same thing, that consciousness and our brain, uh, it works like in waves. And that many example, or it could work like something else, but our examples and our experiences, they tell us that it works in a waves. And as you have said, that consciousness is the other word, and our brain is physical is one word. There's a link in two words, and it's a something that uh, some people agree, some won't, and especially the religious people would agree with you that another word, and there's a physical word. Anyways, and if you have any questions, just leave it in the comment box below. I'll answer it to
Or let me
you
just
as
make
soon.
one comment, one more
Okay,
comment.
okay.
I emphasize the brain, but the heart
Hmm.
has a more coherent nervous
Hmm.
system, electrical signature. I think a
Hmm.
lot of the telepathy
Hmm.
occurs through the heart, not through the brain.
Hmm. And thank you guys for watching us or listening us. And if you have quick questions, let's leave it in the comment box. I'll answer it to you. I will get back to you as soon as I can. And thank you. Have a good day, good night, wherever you are.
Okay, bye.